Hello everyone, welcome back to a very not working Dongits model railway. I arrived back from Australia to many broken things, some of which are a bit critical for the operation of the layout and the channel. First up, my server has a dead hard disk. The server is not only where all my footage is stored, but it's also the core of my home network, so it's a little bit important that it works. None of the other computers in the house will work properly without it, including the PC that controls the layout. And the disk hadn't died. While it clearly wasn't going to do anything useful, it was also just about alive enough to convince the OS to keep trying, resulting in many long pauses while everything timed out. The server now has 3 new large identical disks in a RAID 5 array to replace the 5 unmatched disks that were in it previously. Plus there are new cooling fans in front of the disks too. I saved almost all the old data in the literally millions of files I've accumulated since I created my first archive folder in about 1996. I've lost maybe 20-ish files to file system corruption, and all from places I haven't looked at in at least 15 years. I will go recover them from offline backups eventually, but right now it's not the most important task to get on with. Sometimes perfect is the enemy of good, and I'm definitely okay with good for now. Copying all that data across and proving the copy good on the new array while working around that one disk that really wanted to hang the system every time anyone looked in its general direction made this process take 4 days in total, mostly comprised of waiting. I think it's been worth it though. This new configuration will provide a good platform for archiving footage into the future, and when I do manage to shoot enough footage to fill it up, I can expand it easily. It's also fast enough to live reference over the network while editing. This should help me in future as there'll be far less data to copy back and forth, and a lot less cleaning up when I want to archive video source files to the server. With that sorted, I put a temporary DCC decoder into the NR class so I could give it a run. I thought with a 21-pin socket this would be trivial and not worth filming, but this turned into a bit of a saga. Expect a separate video about that soon, as it's not over yet. When I went to give it an ID, the DCC controller didn't want to program anything. I kept getting C-bus communication errors from JMRI. Add another thing to the list of things that need fixing. Debugging a layout control bus is an interesting topic and worth covering, so out came the multimeter and the camera. A lot of the electronics used on this layout are either customised versions of Merg designs, or outright custom designs I or a friend of mine have created. I have my custom PCBs manufactured for me by PCBWay. PCBWay have just started their 9th anniversary promotion right now, and it's a great time to get your designs manufactured. There are discounts on a whole range of things across the service. Particularly of relevance to us will be deep discounts on PCB prototyping and assembly services. There are also lots of discount coupons available at the moment for a wide range of order sizes. Go check them out at the link in the description. First up, I'm going to test the bus for continuity and termination. With the power fully off, including the USB adapter, which is powered over the USB connection and will trip you up if you aren't paying attention, measure the resistance between the 2 C-bus conductors. This can be done at any location. As the bus is approximately linear and has a 120 ohm resistor at both ends, it looks to the meter like 2 120 ohm resistors in parallel. You should see a resistance of 60 ohms, just like this is showing here. If you get 120 ohms, there's a broken wire or a connection somewhere, or you are missing a terminator. If you get infinity, there's a minimum of 2 breaks, one on either side of where you're measuring. If you get 0, there's a short between the 2 conductors. This could be a literal wiring error, or it could be a fault on one of the boards. Try disconnecting them one at a time, although my recommendation is to start with the USB adapter, as that's the most likely board to be causing you a problem. It's probably still plugged in, powered from the USB, and trying to control the bus. Another potential issue is power supply droop. If the boards are browning out due to a lack of voltage, that can cause problems. With the layout powered up and all the electronics powered, I'm carefully measuring voltage at the most distant end of the layout to where the power supplies are, to check that there isn't excessive voltage drop. The far end is where it will show up the worst. 11.95 volts for main layout power, and 12.25 volts for servo power is fine. Both well within spec and not a problem. As well as C-bus message failures, I eventually also received some virtual COM port errors, which told me the problem was closer to the computer than I'd previously assumed. I started to get suspicious of the USB adapter, or possibly even the computer itself. But just to test, I replaced the previous USB cable, which I'd been using successfully for several years, with this other one I had in storage, and everything started working fine. So it was the USB cable. PCBWay regularly share interesting projects on their Facebook page. One of the things they shared recently that caught my eye was a USB cable tester. That definitely sounds like a useful tool to have. With this fixed, I could set an ID in the NR class and take it down to the club for a test run, only to discover my phone was now dying. Apparently taking it around Australia for a month was the last straw, and it decided that about half an hour away from a charger was its new maximum limit if asked to do anything remotely strenuous, like use the camera. To be fair, it is between 5 and 6 years old, so it's not exactly an unexpected problem to be having. But lacking any way to record footage would definitely be a significant impact to the channel. So add another thing to the list of things that need fixing. This has proven to be a rather expensive month. Here's some footage shot with the replacement phone. Let me know in the comments if it's an improvement on the previous recording quality. Having just splurged on expensive data hard disks, I couldn't afford a high-end phone, but I'm still hoping that there's been enough technical developments in the intervening time which means that a new budget phone camera is better than a 6-year-old high-end phone camera. I have found a way to set the new phone camera up so that I think that it will avoid the worst of the interference patterns with the LED work lights. This relies on disabling a lot of the so-called smart features of the new camera and recording at the highest possible bitrate, but it should enable me to light things better if this ends up being usable. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Another thing that did not work was dropping the lift-out bridge back in. Having been out of place for about 2 months for the majority of spring, it did not go in the gap when I first tried to put it back in. While I did build it in winter, the room was heated to 21 degrees at the time. It's only 24 in here now, but the humidity is much higher now than it was then, so I'm assuming that's the primary factor in the expansion of the baseboard. With some careful, percussive adjustment of the peninsula board, I did get it to drop in, although not without lifting a couple of bits of track. I'm using a conveniently sized wood offcut which just so happens to fit exactly between the rails to line the track up while re-gluing. This is one of those things that would be incredibly difficult to make accurately if you tried, but I've got a box full of these offcuts and this specific one just so happens to fit perfectly. I've lost a couple of chairs here, that's something I'll have to look at later. See you next time up here in the study at Donget's Model Railway.